She woke up today and chose violence. As you can see, I got my pearls on, I have my little diamond earrings in, and I have this beautiful red, white, and blue dress on. If you have paid any attention to the title, you will know what we're doing today. We are going to be talking about Red, White, and Royal Blue, the book versus movie adaptation. I am in a firm minority who thinks that the movie is better, and that is because I did not like the book very much. What? Which we'll get into why. And I thought, why not have some story point while we talk about the story. I got my fancy wine glass and my fancy notebook with all of my notes, so let's get into it. I'm definitely gonna need this wine because the amount of derision I might get for this video, I'm not sure if I'm prepared for. Like I said, I was not the biggest fan of this book. I do understand why so many people love it so much. Personally, it just didn't really vibe with me. There are a couple things that I did like about it, however, like I didn't hate the book by any means. Obviously, I really like the premise. I think a rom-com about the president's son and the Prince of the UK is a fantastic like setup. My favorite thing about the book is Alex's discovery that he is bisexual. His particular story is actually very close to what I went through personally, so it was kind of nice to see that representation that like it's not that abnormal to realize in your 20s that you might not be straight. So I really appreciated that, and I really appreciated how the book kind of took its time to really explore how he felt about certain situations that happened in, you know, his young adulthood and like what it was like grappling with being bisexual in your 20s. So that was really cool, and I really appreciated that in particular about the book. It was my favorite thing. I also liked some of the idealism that the book had in it. I think it was a little bit too much. No. Sorry, my cat was trying to get her face in my wine. You can't see her, but Zara is sitting here with me, which, fun fact, my cat has the same name as Zara from the book. Say hi, baby. Hello. We'll see how that actually came out. I did not really see the angle of that. But yeah, okay. So I liked some of the idealism that was in the book. I think that it was a beautiful message to have political figures come out and be proud and, you know, kind of what the world should look like if that were the case. There was some beautiful messaging around there. I do think it was a little bit too idealistic. I don't want to get too political, but I do think the idealism was a little bit separated from reality. I don't know. I think idealizing any political figure is not a smart idea, but that's a whole other discussion that I don't want to get into today. So the things that I did not like about the book. Kind of leading into the thread of the idealism being too much, I think that the political aspect of the book was a little bit over the top, and I get why. So here's the thing about this book is that it is a fan fiction, like through and through, both from the romantic side of it and also from the political side of it. This is a fan fiction. This was an attempt to cope with what happened in 2016. And don't get me wrong, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. We all coped with what happened then in our own ways, and I think writing is like a great way to do that. Let me make it clear, there's nothing wrong with fan fiction either. I love fan fiction. I think that it's great to get to like live with these characters that we love in different ways, and there are some fan fictions that I've read that have been better than published books, so there's nothing wrong with fan fiction in itself. It's just I did not expect this book to be like a fan fiction, so that kind of put me off a little bit, just because, I don't know, I guess it just wasn't what I expected. And I didn't really want to read a fan fiction about what would have happened if Trump didn't win the election, because that's not the reality that we live in, unfortunately. So that was a little much for me. I also didn't really love the characters themselves. Alex and Henry in the book read a little bit like 12-year-olds. They're supposed to be in their 20s, and yet they're like screaming at each other outside of a palace, and just, I don't know, the way that they spoke to each other and to the other characters, and like some of the texting dialogue and all of that stuff, it just felt very juvenile to me when these should have been like proper young adults, not like YA, but like young adults moving into their careers. This is more of a new adult book than a young adult book. I think at one point it was classified as young adult, but this is new adult. And if you watched my Six of Crows reading vlog, I went into a whole spiel about the difference between young adult and new adult, but like these are young men who are supposed to be like stepping into the careers. Like Alex is, you know, wants to be in politics, and Henry is, I mean, Henry's a prince, so he didn't really get to choose what he wanted to do, but like they're supposed to be more mature than they are, and they really aren't. And it was just like the amount of cussing that they did, and like yelling that they did, and like immature decisions that they made about like they're supposed to be being careful. And I get it, young people do stupid things and they're very emotional even into their 20s, but it was just like, I don't know, maybe I'm an old fart. I'm in my 30s, so maybe it's just me, but I just wish that they had been a little bit more adult, because I don't remember being like that when I was in my 20s. And kind of, I guess, in that same route, then the humor just did not land for me. I think the thing about the characters is they did not feel like real people to me. They felt like the author's interpretation of what a hip, cool political character should have been. So they kind of felt very fake. They just didn't feel like real fleshed out characters to me. They felt like caricatures of what the author would have liked to have seen in the political sphere. So because of that, I think the humor didn't really land with me. Like the PowerPoint scene that everybody loves so much completely threw me like 1,000 miles out of the story. What the fuck? I was like, what is this? Who does this? A hip, cool president, that's who would do it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You probably don't know what I mean because everybody loves it, and I'm literally the only person on the planet who thought that that was completely absurd and kind of ruined the story for me. I started skimming after that because I just was like, this is clearly not my cup of tea. Another thing that I did really love about the book was the diversity in it. There are people of all different sexualities and races, and there's trans characters, which Casey also does a really good job of in their next book, One Last Stop, which that book I absolutely loved. So it's not even like just Casey's writing that I don't really vibe with, it was just in particular this book. So yeah, the diversity was really well done in this, although I will say I didn't really love some of the things that the author tried to do to incorporate Alex's Hispanic heritage into it. And again, this is like probably a personal thing because I know that they had sensitivity readers and, you know, had actual like Mexican people read the book to make sure that it was an authentic representation. So it was more just like whenever Alex and his sister were saying like chica and chico, it kind of like felt forced to me in particular. That could be because of my own experience. I am a very bad Latina, so I know when I was younger and I didn't have a lot of exposure to my own culture and I wanted to try to like vibe with it a little more, I would try to say that, and it felt weird and awkward and very forced. So that also could just be a me thing, but I felt like mentioning it because, again, the whole time of reading this, I felt very disconnected from the characters in the story just because it did feel very fanfiction-y and it did feel like they just weren't real people. If you vibed with these characters and you like felt very seen and represented in that, I'm not saying that like you're not a real person or anything like that. Like what I'm saying is just the way that this was written, it wasn't able to connect the characters with me. So yeah, I didn't like the book for those reasons. And the movie fixed basically every single one of those things. So in a nutshell, that's why I personally think that the movie is better than the book. The jokes and the cussing is completely toned down in the movie, but it's still funny. And, you know, Alex and Henry are still kind of childish in the beginning, and they're petty, and, you know, they're like squabbling because they had this miscommunication. So there's still like a touch of that in it, but it's toned down to a reasonable amount, I think, which I could kind of buy into more. In general, Alex and Henry are much more mature, and I know the actors are older, so they probably went with slightly older versions of them anyway. But for example, that castle scene that I was talking about before, where Alex like shows up to the castle and is like screaming at the top of his lungs outside, which is not only just super immature, but like extremely irresponsible too, because they're supposed to be keeping this a secret. I think in the movie it was just like much better done because Alex is mad, clearly. Like, you know, they're still arguing, they're still yelling at each other when they're in Henry's bedroom, but he approaches it more maturely. Like, he comes in and he's like, can we please talk? Like, he's just trying to like breach this communication with his boyfriend who's ignoring him, but he's not out of control yelling at the top of his lungs. Like, you know what, I don't know, it's just like I appreciated the approach to their characters more because they were more mature and they felt more realistic, I guess, because you can see the emotions on them. You know, the dialogue is like a little bit more timeless, I want to say. I do think the book version, a lot of the jokes and the way they talk is very tied to the generation that this was written for. Ooh, good wine. I don't know. I don't really have more to say about the characterizations other than that. Like, they felt more authentic to me. Maybe because I could see the actors. They did a good job portraying what they were all going through. I think Alex's Hispanic roots was well done. We see him speaking Spanish, and you know, there's a lot of Latin music that's in the movie, which I really appreciated. The other thing that I didn't really like about the politics being like a little over the top, that was also toned down because this movie focused more on the romance rather than the political aspect of it all, but it was still present. It's still an important part of the story. It's just, it was more of a background fixture as opposed to like a main focus of the story, which I also appreciated. And this isn't to say that I think that the movie is perfect. Like, I do think, you know, there are certain things that they left out of the book that I think could have been more important. Like, I know one of the big criticisms of the movie, and this is kind of going back on the politics being less important in the movie. In the book, the leak of their emails is tied to the Republican Party. I forget his name. It's kind of a tactic that they try to use to lose the election for Ellen, which, yes, I think that they probably could have done a better job of tying that in with the whole McGill story. But on the flip side, and this is the last point that I want to talk to about book to movie adaptations, there is a distinct difference between a book and a movie that I don't know if everybody fully realizes or thinks about when they're thinking about these types of adaptations. In a book, descriptions slow a story down, while dialogue speeds it up. So when you're reading descriptions, even if they're action descriptions, it slows the story down because the reader needs to take time to process the worlds and paint the picture in their head. And then dialogue, you're just reading people speaking, so it's usually much quicker to like skim through. They're also usually like shorter sentences, so yeah, descriptions are slower, dialogue is quicker. However, in a movie or a TV show, it is the exact opposite. There's no descriptions needed because you can see what's going on, so any action sequence or like traveling sequence or montage that they do is going to speed the story up because you can just visually take in what's going on, whereas dialogue slows the story down because it grounds you into a particular moment with the characters where you have to process like what they're saying and their facial expressions and like all the like little nuances that are going on in between the dialogue being said. So let's take an example from this book. I know a lot of people are upset that a lot of the character interactions have been cut down and some characters were cut out entirely. So I want to talk about Liam. I'm pretty sure that was his name. Liam is Alex's friend who he used to have in high school, and they used to hook up all of the time, and Alex didn't really think anything of it because he didn't realize that he was into guys. He just thought that they were friends who kind of did this and it was like no big deal, whereas Liam is gay and was like super into him. In the book, this is really useful because we get to see Alex like processing stuff that has happened in his past once he's like starting to realize that he has feelings for Henry, and he's like, well, wait a second, this happened, what was that then? And so you kind of get the descriptions of his past with this guy and his thought process on like how he's feeling about it now, and then you get the dialogue to speed the scene up when he's actually talking to Liam and trying to like figure out what's going on. I don't remember how long this is in the book, but it's probably at least like half a chapter, if not more. So there's time to be able to explore that, and it's very useful for the narrative. Whereas in the movie, this would waste precious time. You have to somehow give the audience the indication that Liam is this person that he hooked up with in the past. So whether that's done through like a flashback or, you know, I don't know, him talking to Nora about it or something like that, that's gonna take at least a minute or two to get in. And then you have to have him call Liam and they have to have this conversation to get Alex to the point where he kind of understands, okay, yeah, I am into guys. This would take up like 5 minutes maybe of the movie for a character that is literally never going to come back again. So it doesn't really make sense to waste the time on this character in the movie when you only have 2 hours max, you know, to be able to dedicate to Alex's discovery of his bisexuality. And I actually think that the movie did do a good job of kind of changing it, but still giving it some honor that like Alex isn't fully like committed to the fact that he's bisexual. I think if this had been turned into a TV show over a movie, they could have spent time with Liam's story, and it could have been an entire episode if they wanted it to. But for the purposes of a movie, I think that it's better that they had Miguel as opposed to Liam, because Miguel can offer a similar purpose in that Alex has had a past with him that he's not really like thinking much about, because it was only once and it wasn't a big deal to him, and he's not really like, you know, trying to do it again, even though it was fun when it happened. But Miguel as a journalist can come back. That's why they tied him into leaked emails and the leak about the Texas campaign. Like, it makes more sense to have a character that's going to repeatedly be in the narrative, be this type of lead-in for Alex's discovery of his bisexuality. And again, like I said, I don't agree with like all of the choices that they made in cutting certain plots out or certain characters out, but for me, the movie did a better job of conveying the characters to me than the book did. I really felt for Henry in this storyline. I love that we got to see part of it from his perspective in, you know, what it was like for him when the emails leaked and kind of the depression that he was going through when the palace was like trying to keep him hidden and all that stuff. I also wanted to say kudos to this story just in general for taking the like big declaration of love and like making it more than just a declaration of love. Like Henry and Alex going out onto the balcony, which I actually don't remember if this is what happened in the book, because like I said, I started skimming towards the second half, so I don't really remember everything to do with when Henry like confronted his family and was like, you know, allowed to be who he is. But at least as far as the movie goes, and I've watched it 4 times, just Alex and Henry stepping out onto the balcony to like greet all of their supporters is just so powerful. Not just as a declaration of their love, but just in general of like, we can be queer and be proud and be safe and be supported and loved. And it's just like, I don't know, I just think that it's usually in rom-coms, this type of scene is like, you know, everybody does the like, "Hoo, yay, you guys are like together finally," and it's like all kumbaya and wonderful. But this was like more impactful because it actually had like a political statement to make, basically. So yeah, I don't know. I absolutely love the movie. If you didn't and you're disappointed with the fact that they cut so much from the book, you know, I totally get it. I know that this book is like very precious to a lot of people, and I don't want to undermine that. I know there are not many people who feel like me, so I wanted to put my opinion out there. If you made it to this point of the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here with me. See you next time. And this is what it's all about. Oh my god, you're so cute. Look at you sitting on my dress. Do it again. Take my hand. Oh, thank you. You look nice. Got itchy ear. Yeah. I'll find something. Do I want to do this again? No, I don't care. If they see a plug, they see a plug.